this is a little bit of a tip and trick, right? This is something that's been going around online. I've yet to test it just because I don't believe on the other side of the spectrum, right? So now we're discussing latitude. It's a published, I think, 15 stops, am I correct? Sony? 14 to 15 stops of latitude. Now, that may or may not be true in a real world situation, but a predominant theory that's going around online right now is that when you shoot, and I hope this chart illustrates it, when you shoot at a higher ISO threshold, you're actually allowing more detail into your highlights. Now it's hard to see this because it's a dot matrix. I think you might be able to see it better on the screens, right? But if you actually look, it makes sense. Again, in terms of practical application, I'm not so sure yet. But when you shoot at a higher ISO, and you shoot into, say, the sky, apparently it allows for more highlight detail, right? Inversely, when you shoot at a lower ISO, your second base, it allows more shadow detail, right? Theoretically, because all you're doing is you're shifting your latitude. So if this is the entire spectrum of latitude base, from here to here, when you move to higher ISO, you're shifting it up. That's it. So theoretically, you will retain more highlight detail, right? Now that's the exact opposite of what I grew up learning, but it makes sense. Now inversely, if you shoot at a lower ISO at night, you'll get more shadow detail, right? But who the hell wants to shoot 800 at night? You gotta light more, it takes more time. You want to use that variable ISO. I'm done. Any questions? Seriously, I want to get to playing. Go ahead, please. Do we have a mic? Yeah? I'm asking you a mic. Who's going to volunteer, by the way, to be talents? Who wants to see the process up close? I think one thing that's going to be great, I've never had the pleasure of working with Dicks on a set. So this is going to be a first for me, and I'm looking forward to it. Feedback. Who had a question? No one? Seriously, Vic, you got a question for me? Vic, no, you have a question? Anybody? Yes, sir.
So I noticed, like, when you bump up the ISO, the highlights go up and the shadows become like grainy. And I guess you balance the shadows out, but then the highlights are still like super sharp. So what do you do with that?
Sorry. When you bump up the ISO, meaning you're deviating from the base?
Yeah, like
what camera are you talking about?
Like let's say an FX3, like 12-800 ISO. Like I noticed like the highlights become really sharp, and sometimes you kind of don't want that kind of highlights, but you gotta go up to 12-800. So what do you do about that?
You have to control the situation with light, right? I mean, like Dick's explained, it's the basic exposure triangle, right? Switching to 12,800 ISO it's not a Hail Mary. It's not going to save you on set if you don't understand how to use the camera, right? So you still have to control your exposure values. You still have to understand how to light. You have to understand your contrast ratios, right? Because again, like you just said, your highlights will clip, your shadows will become milky because you've jumped up in ISO, right? So you'll have to stop down, increase your key light, right? Maybe flag off your subject, stuff like that. It saves you in a pinch, but it's not something that you should necessarily do 100% of the time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it's the exposure triangle, basically. You have to control it. It's not something you just flick on and think everything's going to be okay, right? Like I said, it's a machine. You have to tell your tools how to work for you, or the tool controls you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Guy behind you, had a question? Over there to your left.
What's your process for color grading with S-Log3? Do you occasionally do that? Do you like to do any color grading? What's your take on it?
Usually I don't have the benefit of running a lot of LUTs in film, primarily because producers don't want to pay a colorist over time to establish that. Right? Now, is it counterproductive? Very much so. In terms of color grading on S-Log 3, it doesn't deviate very much from how we color grade anything else. I mean, you first control your contrast and then all of that. There's absolutely nothing different. One thing that I love about it is its flexibility across the different camera systems. Right? Now, the problem is, again, Cinematography 3, I think, gives you, it's not the perfect log format, but it is excellent in the hands of a good color. I'm sorry, what are your thoughts on that?
It was just more about asking if you had like a workflow or if you had some system that you could use whenever you go on shoots, if there's something that you're looking out for when you're using like the FX9, FX6, or FX3.
Right.
With the S-Log 3.
I think part of it, in terms of my personal process, is understanding exactly how I want the image to look, and that comes from experience. Understanding your contrast ratios, understanding the fundamentals of your exposure triangle will ensure you the latitude you need to control the image overall. So that comes from my personal process, again, because I'm a little old school. So I like to take it from there. I use my colorist as a Hail Mary sometimes because he gets me out the pin. But more so often than not, I like to trust in baking it into the can first. Okay. Anybody else? JB? Nothing. Jordan? Nothing again. Anybody? I'm super good on time, right? You guys want to ask questions from Dix or Henry? No? Something that's really important is, for me personally, I've had the benefit of working with sound teams from different countries, right? And one thing that people don't pay a lot of attention to in the Philippines is the discipline of sound. Now, sound itself is extremely immersive. If you were in a movie theater and, say for example, the picture went soft, would you complain? No, right? You'd attribute it to a human error, maybe just found its way to the edit, that's it, that's okay. But if the sound went off when you were sitting in a movie theater, what would you do? You would fucking ask for your money back, right? So it's something that we don't really pay a lot of attention to or give credit to, but it is a fundamental part of what we do. It is so immersive and adds a layer to our viewing experience that we often don't pay attention to. Right? I mean, what am I? Yes, Henry? Here we go. Here's the round table.
The thing with audio, kasi the difference between audio and video is you can correct video right away kasi it's visual. It's something that you see. But audio, you only notice audio pag may mali, like Direk Noel said. So if you find a movie or a film or anything and you don't have anything to say about audio, then that tells you that it was good mixing, it was good audio acquisition. Kasi you didn't find anything wrong with it. So it's subtle eh. It's parang subconscious kasi sa inyo yung audio. So I liken it to if you go to a jeep, if you ride a jeep and then you try to figure out the lighting inside the jeep, you take it for granted. Pero try to see where does the light come from? From in front of you, from behind, from diba? So audio is kind of like that. You have to it takes conscious effort to understand the layers of audio. Kasi you take it in, like right now, you hear me, you hear the ambulance, you hear the air AC, it's all compressed for you. There you have to peel off the layers of audio and understand each bit of it. The thing with it is, it's easy to add, but you can't subtract from it pag na-record mo na siya. So you have to control all the noises before getting to post.
Isn't that what Pro Tools is for?
Nope, you don't fix in post. Don't fix in post. Okay, so it's going to cost you a lot of money.
But it is doable.
To a certain extent, yeah. We did VO using a cell phone because we couldn't send a team to Davao, and then they kind of corrected it with AI. But there's only so much that AI can do, and obviously you need a good editor. You need someone who knows what they're doing, and you don't really want to take that risk, that gamble. So ayun. So in the same way, it's all about trying to establish a good set no, wherein you invest in each department. You give each department what they need para you have a good final output.
I think just to piggyback on what Henry was saying, how many of you guys, I'm going to ask you a question again because I'm trying to involve you all. How many of you guys have had the pleasure of seeing Saving Private Ryan in a 5.1 Dolby theater? Thank you, man. Anybody else? It will blow your mind. The immersiveness of being in a war zone, just the opening scene when Tom Hanks lands on the beach in Normandy and just hearing the bullets fly behind you and from the right channel to the left channel. The mixing and the immersive experience is insane. Please, if you can, I really implore that you all watch this.
Sorry, I have something to add there. Parang, we did a reality show on an island. Tapos yung days off namin, so I was just in a cabin on stilts. So nag-enjoy lang ako ng waves, diba? Ang ingat pa ako. But then, it's nice practice kasi you kind of sit back and then you enjoy the waves. So parang ganun, that's how audio is. That's how immersive it can be. Diba? So parang, kasi audio isn't just left and right or mono. So once you understand that experience, it's kind of nice. For me kasi, personally, when I was doing that docu about the weaving, there's this thing, parang it's very intimate kasi only I could hear it. But the way they cut the threads, the way they tie the threads and then roll it around yung kung saan nila iniikot. There's something about it. There's something about, you know kung sino yung makanda na, sino yung very experienced, sino yung nagsisimula, who's using scissors, who's using a blade na ginawa lang nila doon. There's something about it na it's difficult to translate kasi with all the noise around you. Pero that's the challenge, is for you to acquire that, to capture that. It's kind of like getting that Kodak moment eh. Alam niyo yun, yung parang feeling mo, parang Korean novela na nag-slow-mo na, tapos parang yun na yung end credits. There's something about that for audio as well. But it's difficult to explain kasi it's between me, the mic, and the headphones. Pero for me, that's what keeps me going, especially with docu, is I get to experience that. And the challenge of trying to capture that and share that with my audience. Ano ba? Ang punchline kasi, one of my favorite behind the scenes is from the movie Australia. They did a behind the scenes and they had one for audio. And one of their punchlines there was, see the world through your ears. It's a sonic world. Diba? I mean, you do it with visual also, but don't forget there's audio also. And you can see the world through your ears as well.
You know the best instances of post-production sound design for me was? How many of you have seen Heat? Please tell me you guys have seen Heat. Nobody? Michael Mann's Heat? Yeah, Heat. Thank you. You understand that they gave every single person's gun a different sound. So even if they weren't on screen, you could tell who was firing. Right? So it's those little intricate details that add into the overall experience of your viewing pleasure. Right? I mean, who would have thought of something like that? It's a gun. A gun should be a gun, right? No. Each gun has an individual sound, which technically it should, but it's an individual, distinctive sound. So you know if Bobby De Niro is firing a weapon off screen. You know if Val Kilmer is, get in the vent! You know if he's over there.
They were, a friend of mine told me sa India, they were just recording, nature sounds. And then over the years, they could tell how it differed because of the population of like the birds and the wildlife, how it differed and how it was affecting the climate based off of the audio recordings over the years. It's kind of nice also kasi nga, it paints you a picture. Medyo addict.
That's not what we're here to talk about, no. Okay.
But ayun na nga, parang it paints you a picture. That's why I was telling you about how important atmospherics is as well. Sige, maghahanda na ako.
Anybody else? Or do you guys want like 15 minutes to take a smoke break before we get into practical? Yeah, sir. Do we got a mic?
Good afternoon, sir. Gusto ko lang po sana magpakwento kung paano kayo nag-start out sa film industry and paano,
No, yeah, I can hear you.
saka kung paano kayo nag-start out as a cinematographer.
Okay, that's actually a really long story. Hope you got some time. I started out in the industry 2002. I first started out as art department in Singapore. I worked for MTV Asia, and I shot, I think, what was their first narrative series, which at the time was shot on a Canon XL1 with a PS Technic adapter so that we could use cinema lenses at the time.